academic evaluation development tools and synthetic theory environmental. And now we're waiting topic is the use of the dynamic mathematical program of GeoGebra in classes in mathematical disciplines in the conditions of mixed learning. In this article describes one of the universal tools for facilitating blended learning of mathematical disciplines is the dynamic mathematical program GeoGebra. Authors collective Tatiana Vodovanyuk, Tatiana Mahomeda, Irina Chahai, and Vitaly Dubovik. Present now colleagues.
Good afternoon.
Okay, Vitaly Dubovik.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Can I share a screen and present our slides, not video?
Okay, please, video on.
Not video. Can I share my presentation?
Okay, share our presentation in our screen. Okay, start please.
Do you see that?
Yes, I'm seeing.
Okay. Good afternoon. Let me introduce the topic of research, use the dynamic mathematical program of GeoGebra in classes in mathematical disciplines in the condition of blended learning. The rapid development of information technologies, their application in all fields, everyday life, their penetration into the field of education, necessitates computer support of the educational process. One of the important factors determining the level of economic and socio-political development of our country is the quality of mathematical education of its population. Improving the quality of mathematical knowledge of higher education seekers is one of the most urgent and important tasks facing modern higher education institutions, in particular pedagogical. The use of blended learning contributes to the improvement of mathematical knowledge of future mathematics teachers, the perfection of the educational process, the rational use of time and resources, and the increase of students' motivation for high-quality mastering of mathematical disciplines. Today, the term blended learning, blended or hybrid learning, in domestic and foreign scientific and educational literature has different interpretation. Learning system, which includes the integration of various forms of learning, full-time learning in classrooms, e-learning and self-learning, which results in a better formation of competencies. Next, pedagogically balanced combination of technologies of traditional, electronic, distance and mobile learning, and the integration of classrooms and extracurricular learning. Next, an approach that combines traditional learning with the use of online learning methods, for example, podcasts, materials and activities conducted on the internet through additional platforms. Or combining traditional formal learning tools, working in classrooms, studying theoretical material with informal, for example, with discussion via email and internet connection. The effectiveness and efficiency of the use of blended learning in the acquisition of mathematical knowledge by students depends on rational combination of different approaches, methods of presentation material, types of work, teaching aids, and more. Teaching aids should be modern, reliable, accessible, and easy to use. One of the universal tools for analyzing blended learning of mathematical disciplines is the dynamic mathematical program, GeoGebra, which helps to visualize student mathematical objects, demonstrate their properties, avoid routine action, and so on. Using GeoGebra make it possible to improve the quality of solving mathematical programs and improve the professional, mathematical, and informational competence of future mathematics teachers. The purpose of the article is to highlight the feasibility and effectiveness of using the dynamic mathematical program GeoGebra in classes in mathematical disciplines, on the example of linear algebra in blended learning environment. One of the important disciplines of fundamental cycle of training future mathematics, future teacher of mathematics is linear algebra. The purpose of the discipline linear algebra in pedagogical university is to reveal the concept of linear transformation in finite dimensional spaces, understanding its position and role in general system of mathematical knowledge and ability to apply to specific situation and education of algebraic and numerical culture. When solving a serious problem in linear algebra, it is often time-consuming to perform cumbersome calculation. This leads to a focus on minor details, the performance of ordinary mathematical calculations, and important significant points are ignored. Therefore, to ensure the automation of solving a certain class of problem, increase the efficiency of learning using latest techniques and technical teaching aids, in the course of linear algebra, it is appropriate and effective to use a dynamic mathematical program GeoGebra. In addition, the use of dynamic mathematical program GeoGebra in linear algebra it is caused by many other factors, including intensification of educational process in connection with which more and more hours for the study of linear algebra are allocated for self-study. So, for example, in Vocational State Pedagogical University, the curricula in linear algebra for the study of the discipline provide 180 hours. In particular, 94 hours are set aside for independent study of educational material by students. The difficulty of studying the discipline of linear algebra by students, in particular, due to need to teach a lot of theoretical material. So there is a need to constantly intensify the educational activities of students and promote interest to the discipline. And the need to visualize educational materials to quickly and effectively evaluate the result of educational activities, etc. GeoGebra software can be used both to increase the efficiency of self-study of linear algebra and in lectures and practical classes conducted in both full-time and distant and blended learning. During practical training in linear algebra, GeoGebra can act as intermediary between the teacher and students, acting as a simulator in solving certain types of exercise. For example, the applet Jordan Gauss latest can be used during the practical lessons for first year students majoring 014.0 for secondary education mathematics on system of linear equations, aiming to develop practical skills and ability to solve system of linear equations by Jordan and Jordan Gauss. On a specific example, the teacher showed that with this applet you can work the following elementary transformation of the row on the rows of matrix, permutation of two lines places, multiplication of the matrix row by non-zero element, and one line another multiplied by some number. This is example of solving of a system of linear equation in GeoGebra. Despite the simple and intuitive tools of the applet, before using it independently by students in practical classes, the teacher must not only acquaint students with the functionality by solving specific examples, but also provide students with instruction cards. Instruction cards should be compiled in such a way that the students can work independently with thorough without the help of the teacher. To do this, you need to include in the instruction card QR code with the links to the applet and other useful links, as well as specific example to show the stage of solving system for linear equation. Availability of GeoGebra program promotes realization of an educational path of applicants for higher education. Students can work with the program not only during classes according to the schedule, but also in extracurricular convenient time. They can choose the appropriate composition and number of tasks, the resolution of which, in their opinion, is necessary and sufficient, depending on individual capabilities and needs for the comprehensive assimilation of educational material and the development of appropriate computational ability and skills. There are many advantages to use this applet during practical program in linear algebra. Problems in linear algebra. The main ones are increase the efficiency of formation of practical skills and ability of students to solve system of linear equation by Gauss and Jordan-Gauss methods by development a clear, methodically correct algorithm of students' actions, significant time saving due to routing calculations, actualization of students' cognitive activity. Work with the simulator can be not only with the help to desktop computer or laptops, but also with the help of tablet or smartphones, which allows you to conduct classes not necessarily in computer classroom. With an internet connection, students can attend classes online or complete tasks as effectively as a full-time study. Thus, the GeoGebra becomes an indispensable assistant in blended learning. However, there are significant disadvantages of using the simulator. Among them, the need for tools to work with the program GeoGebra, as well as a connection to the internet, insufficient level of computer literature and methodical preparation for practical work using the dynamic mathematical program GeoGebra. Students use programs for other purposes, which can lead to poor learning of educational materials. After conducted classes in linear algebra in a blended learning environment using the dynamic math program GeoGebra, students were surveyed about the interest and effectiveness of using this program. 24 students of the Faculty of Physics, Mathematics, and Informatics of Politic General State Pedagogical University took part in the survey. The results of surveys are presented in figures. The interaction of participants in the educational process with various computer-based teaching aids, so-called teaching aids, should be used in classes in professional disciplines as often as possible, so that future teachers can successfully and skillfully implement them in their professional activities. After all, such computer-based learning tools allow you to optimize and beautify the educational process, interest, and motivate students. The use of GeoGebra should not be limited to lecture classes. You can ask students to do homework on their own in a notebook and only them check in the program. To effectively check to complete task as a teacher and pair or groups of students, you can offer to check the completed task in the proposed program. Thus, the dynamic mathematical program GeoGebra is a universal tool for organizing blended learning. Using its capabilities, you can both organize the work during the lessons and further independent performance of tasks, and use it at any stage of the lessons. The use of the dynamic mathematical program GeoGebra during the blended learning of mathematical disciplines brings the educational process to a qualitatively new level, provides an opportunity to build the educational trajectory of each student individually, taking into account his abilities and needs. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Questions, please? Now, two questions for you. What are the prospects for using the GeoGebra program in blended learning?
As for future direction of this research, it is the development of methodologies for using GeoGebra in teaching other mathematical disciplines and as well as the development electronic manual with built-in GeoGebra applet and development of the methodology of their use. Thank you.
Thank you. And two questions. Have you used GeoGebra with augmented reality?
In where?
With augmented reality. In реальность.
I used GeoGebra can be used in all mathematical disciplines. It depends the goal. GeoGebra can be used as to visualize educational material, as a simulator to evaluate the results of educational activities to get quick results, and many teachers use GeoGebra in their disciplines. For example, in elementary mathematics can be used during learning module functions or studying the module equations and inequality with parameters to geometric visualization of solutions and other.
Okay. Any questions, colleagues? Okay. This is very important problems because mathematical learning and for our children is very, very important problem. Next topic on us, the use of web-oriented technologies in the process of web programming teaching for technical university study. Автор коллективства Algebra, Светлана Литвинова, Ольга Кронда. In this study, analyze the results of a survey of students, Kyiv Polytechnical Institute, Igor Sikorsky, the purpose of which was to find out what integrated development environments of the programming languages senior students independently choose when development program within the educational and professional programs of the faculty, and which correlate with software used by programmers in the implementation. Our screen.
Dear committee members, dear colleagues, we are glad to present our work, which is called The Use of Web-Oriented Technologies in the Process of Web Programming Teaching for Technical University Students. It is done by Svetlana Prospura, Svetlana Litvinova, and Olga Kronda. The realities of the 21st century, informatization, digital transformation, high technologies, web technologies in particular, put Ukraine in front of the global challenges of creating a digital state. It is the implementation of a number of digital projects which form the digital space of the state, in particular those coordinated by the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. The development of significant number of applications requires the state to constantly update them, maintain them, keep them working, which requires qualified programmers. The task of technical universities is to train competitive specialists in the IT field. Higher education institutions, together with the ICT Industry Competitiveness Council and leading companies in the field, are implementing the European Educational Initiatives projects, which aims to provide everyone willing with quality modern education in the field of information technology. This research analyzes the results of a survey of students of National Technical University of Ukraine, Igor Sikorsky Kyiv Polytechnic Institute, the purpose of which was to find out what integrated development environments and programming languages senior students independently chose when developing programs within the educational and professional programs of the faculty, and which correlate with the software used by programmers in the implementation of large IT enterprises, in particular, web programming languages. Surveying, interviewing, as well as a number of methods of comparative analysis were used in the scope of this article, namely the analysis of sociological, scientific, pedagogical, psychological sources, special literature to clarify the features of the advantages and disadvantages of web-based learning tools in the training of IT specialists in technical universities, programming software languages used before university training and accordingly during training at the technical university, integrated development environments used in program development during university studies, as well as programming language choice while independently studying and self-improving by students of IT specialties, bachelors of computer science in particular, the use of programming languages and integrated development environments for third and fourth year and undergraduate students in real projects, and undergraduate students' recommendations on software selection for strengthening the concept of component of academic disciplines were studied as well. Some of web-oriented learning technologies components are as follows: web programming, programming languages, and integrated development environments. Web programming is understood as the developing section of programming focused on developing dynamic web applications, in the creation of which web programming languages are used. Web programming languages, in their turn, are divided into groups: server languages and client languages. There is a large number of programming languages at present time. They are as follows: JavaScript, C#, C++, Java, Python, PHP, Visual Basic, TypeScript, Ruby, ActionScript, Delphi, Perl, LISP, Kotlin, Swift, Groovy, Go, Golang, Haskell, Scala, Go, Lua, and others. And this list is constantly growing. Ukrainian profile resource do.ua conducted their planned survey on programming languages for 2021, which was attended by 7,211 respondents, 92% of who are located in Ukraine. The results of this survey showed that among the top 5 programming languages in Ukraine, the leader is JavaScript, done by 18.1% of the respondents, with the interior programming languages coming in the following order: Java, 14.7%, C#, 14.3%, Python, 12.1%, and PHP, 10.1%. Programming languages analysis basing on the spheres of use, backend, front-end, full stack, and mobile, is shown in the following table. You can see it. The European Educational Initiatives project has been implemented in Ukraine since 2016. It is a powerful joint project of the ICT Industry Competence Council, higher education institutions of Ukraine, and leading IT companies. It is implemented with the support and partnership with the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, in particular the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Education, Science and Innovation. The purpose of the project is to provide everyone willing with quality modern education in the field of information technology, as well as to help IT specialists to be competitive in the labor market and have a guarantee of future employment. Thus, within the framework of our project, a survey of students in the field of knowledge 12, information technology, specialties, software engineering, and information systems and technologies at the Faculty of Informatics and Computer Engineering was conducted, which was attended by 105 student respondents. Among them, fourth year of study students make 87%, third year study students 10%, and other years 3%. The purpose of our survey was to find out which programming languages senior students independently choose when developing programs within the educational and professional programs of the faculty, and how they correlate with software used by programmers in the implementation of large projects in IT enterprises, including web programming languages, integrated development environments, platforms, frameworks, technologies, and libraries. The comparative analysis of software use in the following areas was conducted before studying at the university, while studying at the university, independent studying of software, and programming languages and integrated development environments used in real projects, and students' recommendations on the selection of software to link the content component of the studying course. This slide shows programming languages that students managed before university studies. You can see the diagram. It shows programming languages that students managed before studying at the university, and the results are as follows. 36.2% did not learn any programming language at all. 36.2% studied Pascal, which is now considered a dead language, programming language, and 23.8% of respondents had skills in C++ programming. Here, this slide shows programming languages covered by educational programs of the university, and the results are shown as follows. For while being at the university, they study first rate for use of C++. It makes 69.5%. Second rate, C#, 64.5%. Third rate for JavaScript, 50.5%. Students' independent study of software is shown in this diagram. It illustrates the students' independent study of software, namely the improvement percentage or self-study of new programming languages by students, programmers during their course at the university. The following slide shows the use of programming languages in IT firms and real projects done by students. It says that first place takes for JavaScript 51.5%, second place C#, 29.7%, and TypeScript 29.7%, and third place Python 20.8%. The following slide shows graduate students' recommendations on programming languages selection for studying at the university. It appears important to take into account the graduate students' recommendations on software selection to refer to the strengthening component of the course. The results of those recommendations survey are presented in the order of programming languages as follows. JavaScript 79.8%, Python 72.1%, C++ 67.3%, C# 61.5%, and Java 60.6%. An integrated development environment is an application that provides web developers with the tools required for developing software. It usually comes with a text editor, automation tools, code compilation, and a debugger. This slide shows IDE use while writing computer programs in the scope of university studies. As you can see, it shows the following results. First place, Microsoft Visual Code, 61.5%. Second place, Android Studio, 57.7%. Third place, IntelliJ, 35.6%, and Microsoft Visual Community, 35.6%. IDE used by students while writing computer programs in the real projects of IT companies beyond the university is shown the IDE in most demand as Microsoft Visual Code, 46.1%, IntelliJ IDEA, 19.6%, WebStorm, 17.7%, PyCharm, 15.7%, and Microsoft Visual Community, 15.7%. Graduate students' recommendations on integrated development environments are shown in this slide. In their recommendations for studying IDEs within the university educational problems, students also range IDE in the following sequences: Microsoft Visual Code, 55.8%, Android Studio, 45.2%, Microsoft Visual Community, 40.4%, IntelliJ IDEA, 40.4%, and PyCharm, 28.8%. The percentage of students combining studying with work in an IT company are shown in this slide. The results of the survey showed 76.7% of graduate students in the fourth year of studying are already employed in IT companies as full-time employees. This high employment rate indicates that KPI graduate students are competitive in modern IT labor markets. The scientific novelty of this study lies in the fact that a study and analysis was done for the first time on observing student surveys on the use of programming languages and integrated development environments before and during the university course, on the choice of programming languages while independent studying and self-improving in IT specialties. The high level of students' training at the faculty is evidenced by the fact that the fourth year's 76.7% of graduate students are already employed in IT companies as full-time employees. Such high employment rate indicates that KPI graduates are competitive in today's IT labor market. The present research is unique. No similar comparisons of scientific papers have been found, so the relevance of the study is undoubtful. The authors believe that the material found in this article will be interesting not only for researchers, teachers, and students of higher education institutions of Ukraine, but scientists from Europe, USA, Australia, and Japan, as well as for both improving their educational programs and implementing practical work in collaboration with IT companies. We thank you for your attention.
Звук.
Звук.
Okay. Slana, the first question says students of which specialists took part in the survey?
Thank you for questions. And with the framework of these projects, a survey of students in the field of knowledge information technology, specialties survey engineering, information system and technology at the Faculty of Informatics in Computer Engineering. Two specialties.
Okay. Two questions. What is the purpose of the survey?
Yes. The purpose of the surveys was to find out which programming language senior students independently choose when the development programs with the educational and professional programs of the faculty.
Okay. And next questions. Do you plan to do such a survey at other universities?
Yes, yes. I plan to do such surveys in other university, example, Melitopolsky University, Kryvyi Rog National University, and Sumy.
Kherson State University.
Sumy and Uzhgorod. And I plan to do such surveys in this university.
This is very important research because the first language for our students very big problems. After school, Pascal, and we say this dead language then, because our students begin in our laboratory and sleeping and not speaking and not writing. And we waiting in our university. Thank you. And next topic on our track, modeling of the adaptive system of individualization and personalization of future specialists, professional training in the conditions of learning. The authors collective Renal Sachiv, Slav Sachiv, Slav Rubrix, and Oleg Spirin. And present now Vladislav Krublik, includes the contextual, pedagogical, and instrumental subsystem. In the system, the adaptivity is planned to be implemented to show the adaptation of education materials, monitoring and devices, face-to-face classes, simulation, and many others, etc. Vladislav, are you ready?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Vladislav with us in Kherson State University, and please to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me represent to you our research about modern system of learning. Our research depicts such actual theme as modeling of the adaptive system of individualization and personalization of future specialists, professional training in the condition of blended learning. Various aspects of improving the training have been studied by many scientists and educators. As a result of pedagogical research, scientists are increasingly inclined to believe that in the context of great variety of educational content and the individual preferences of students, the educational process can be carried out through the introduction of adaptive learning system in higher education institutions. Many scientists have devoted their research works on the modeling of such systems. Such models were offered by them. Pedagogically adaptive systems, learning system based on learning style and cognitive state, model of user-centric adaptive learning, adaptive content according to knowledge levels. However, the need for modeling and development of a system in which the adaptive technologies approaches to individualization and personification of education for the purpose of the future specialist professional training in the condition of blended learning in a higher educational institutions remains relevant. In the process of modeling of the adaptive system of individualization and personalization of future specialist professional training is the condition of blended learning. Further on ASIPT, we relied on this scientific work on the methodology of research and pedagogy as well as on the modeling of pedagogical system and environments. we analyze study representing the development of adaptive system platforms of learning in higher education institutions. As a methodological basis for the construction of a SPT model, we used a polyparadigmical approach which involves the use of an open cluster of approaches to learning that do not interfere with each other, and their integrated application has a synergistic effect. The leading role in the cluster is given to the systematic approach, which provides the basis for the subsystem: contextual, pedagogical, instrumental. The basis of SIPT contextual subsystem is a general idea of the developed adaptive system that is how to concept an idea of its development will be implemented. In ASPT, adaptive learning is carried out by means of adaptation of content educational materials, adaptation of assessment, testing, adaptation of devices, adaptation of face-to-face classes. In SIPT, the individualization of learning gives an opportunity to individually plan content, pace, and time of study using the list of educational resources. This plan is focused on the students' learning preferences and the opportunity to work according to the individual syllabus. In order to implement this option, the following ways of the individualization are planned in system: study of students' individual futures, support of the students' individual syllabus, individualization of learning process, development of students' individual characteristic features, and the formation of new characteristics according to their educational needs. Monitoring of students' individual progress. Teachers turn to personalization in order to intensify and increase the efficiency of the future specialist training process and mastering their new competencies. Personalization of learning in ASIPT is carried out in two ways. First, personalization of the electronic learning environment, further on PLE, a personalization of learning environment, PLE. PLE includes the creation of conditions for the consolidation for various internet services, electronic resources, and ICT tools. Personalization of learning environment means providing students with conditions for having their own set of educational resources, teaching aids, in the laboratories of higher education institutions like STEAM laboratories. The laboratory space is organized in the format of makerspace, a global format of creative space workshops, as a place for brainstorm ideas, conduct experiments, study, put ideas into practice, and improve students' new skills. The special equipment of laboratory usually is expensive or quite specific in its characteristics. The space of the laboratory is specially planned for providing mobility, flexibility, and the ability to use technical aids when learning. Pedagogical subsystem of SIPT model includes an understanding and presentation of aspects related to the process of future specialist professional training. This subsystem, like the majority of pedagogical models of education which represent of unity of process and result, contain 5 components: target, theoretical, methodological, content, activistic, and resultative. We have added a creative component to the traditional structure of the pedagogical model because, in our opinion, learning system should develop the creativity of future specialists, which contributes to more effective development of students' professional competencies. The target component identifies the needs of society in the individualization and personalization of professional training. The aim is to improve the quality of training by creating favorable conditions for their personal development. Task of ASIPT. The theoretical methodological components reveal the conceptual and terminological apparatus educational paradigm and methodological approaches, systematic, synergetic, cybernetic environment, individual competence-based, activistic, contextual, technological, and student-centered, according to which SAPT model is constructed. The content component reflects the content of training in the form of syllabus designed on the basis of the standard of higher education for the bachelor's and master's. Content of courses which is organized in accordance with the requirements of adaptive learning, including the distribution of didactic units in each discipline. The activistic components includes a system of forms, methods, means, organization, and pedagogical conditions that contribute to the improvement of the quality of professional education by developing the future specialist competence necessary for successful future professional activity. The creative component involves the development of students' creativity in the innovative pedagogical activities, their involvement in the development of new projects, writing research paper, participation in the contents, Olympiads, exhibitions, presentations, conferences, etc. The resultative component shows the improvement of the quality of future specialist professional training in the higher education institution by creating favorable conditions for their personal development. All components are interconnected in SIPT model. To implement the adaptation, individualization, and personalization of learning, this environment is created through the use of various tools, information and communication technologies, modern technical means of learning, hardware and software. These tools form the instrumental subsystem of SAPT model. The basis of this subsystem is the distance learning system model. It is not positioned by developers as an adaptive learning system. However, the growing popularity of adaptive learning technology has prompted Moodle developers and other programmers to improve the system. Therefore, to implement the adaptive approach, Moodle has developed appropriate plugins. Among the analyzed plugins, we singled out adaptive quiz for adaptation of testing, IADL learning for the adaptation of content, and the stack of plugins, learning preferences, learning adaptation, navigation web for navigation adaptation. To support the individualization of learning in SDL Moodle, there are the following advantages: creation of a course in SDL in the form of modular structure, formation of modules with the accessibility of material based on the result of studying previous modules and passing mid-courses tests, creation of educational materials in SDL of a branched structure according to a pre-created pedagogical scenario, lecture with feedback, creation of the resource with additional opportunities for material processing for students with instrument influence level, creation of multi-level tests, creation or placement of individual tasks in the course of SDL. SDL Moodle offers the following tools for implementing an individual approach: tools for the formation of the learning route, a multi-criteria assessment tool, tools that allow to implement a variety of education information, compilation of the profile of learning materials, representation for each group of students. Individualization of the learning process using Moodle can be expanded through the use of the mobile learning technologies. The SDL Moodle mobile application have a user-friendly interface and full functionality for students learning distantly, and it is available in the App Store and Google Play. For the organization of personal electronic learning environment, PLE, this is advisable to use appropriate tools. Please see on the slide. Three presented SAPT subsystem can be generalized in the one SAPT model. The developed model of SAPT, which includes three subsystems: contextual, pedagogical, instrumental, takes into account modern requirements to the future specialist professional training, which agree with the aim and outcome of its implementation. All subsystems are interconnected and are determined by the organization and pedagogical conditions of SAPT, the leading of which are conditions of blended learning and subject-subject interaction between the main participants of educational process, teacher and students. In the model of adaptive system of individualization and personalization of future specialist professional training in the condition of blended learning, adaptability is planned to be realized through the adaptation of educational materials, content of learning, assessment, testing, devices, face-to-face classes. Individualization includes the study of students' individual futures, support and assistance of students' individual syllabus, individualization of learning process, development of students' individual futures, and formation of new characteristics according to students' educational needs. Monitoring of students' individual progress. Personification involves the organization of learning environment, including electronic one. A further perspective of the research is the development of a working prototype of the adaptive system based on the stack of educational and information and communication technologies implemented in the structure of higher education institution. Okay, thank you for your attention very much.
Very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. A very interesting research that solves the important problem of creating an adaptive system for personalization, utilization, the professional training of future specialists. A particular case may be the use of a Moodle instead of paid system, which includes more than 11 modules for this purpose. And in text chat, we see questions about students' individual futures do take into account principle or current state. I answer these questions.
Okay.
I answer these questions. So we see the prospect of future research in the development of a system of interaction between existing learning management system and external research for the formation of individual trajectories through the application protocol interface. Any questions? Thank you, Vlad. Thank you. All. And we go and next research formation and self-development of a student's digital competence within the lifelong learning system. Автор коллектив Тамила Бережна, Svetlana Zayat, Svetlana Щербина. In this research deals with the analysis of the modern theoretical foundation and approach to the development of digital literacy within the lifelong learning process, and largely on of the tools for determining the level of formation of digital competence using Cifrogram test, which is based on the conceptual model of a digital competence of citizens, DIGCOM, the digital competence framework for the citizens, and describe it and analyze it in detail. Present Svetlana Zayat.
No, sorry. No, Svetlana Shibirina.
No.
It's okay, thank you.
Okay, please.
Can we show our presents, or you show our presents?
Yes, video.
Video present.
Please video on.
Thank you. And sorry for my technical problems with my video. Okay. Thanks. Dear colleagues, the result of the research on the topic of formation and self-development of the student digital competence within the lifelong system present to your attention. Okay. Maybe without voice. Dear colleagues, the results of the research on the topic of formation and self-development of the students' digital competence within the lifelong learning system present to your attention. The article deals with the analysis of the modern theoretical foundations and approaches to the development of digital literacy within the lifelong learning processes, namely one of the tools for determining the level of formation of digital competence using Cifrogram test, which is based on the conceptual model of digital competence of citizens, DCOM. The Digital Competence Framework for Citizens is described and analyzed in detail. The research was carried out in line with the competence-based personality activity and communicative approaches. The training program for economic analysts used active and interactive teaching methods and practices. The rapid pace of development of information technologies, the emergence of new devices, the growth in the number of Internet users and makers of the modern information society. In recent decades, a unique situation of dialectical contradiction unfolds. A generation is growing that from an early age knows how to handle various gadgets, and this generation is third by those who grew up in the system of classical education without constant access to the Internet and without social networks. The European Commission has for several years expressed concern about the slow adoption of digitalization processes in education and training. In order to study the state of the current level of implementation of e-learning in educational institutions of the European Union, the European Commission conducted a survey of citizens' opinions and published it in the framework of the Eurobarometer. The Council of the European Union adopted on 22 May 2018 a revised recommendation on core competences for lifelong learning, which emphasizes the need to support the development of core competences, which a particular focus on improving the achievement of basic digital skills and participation in society in a lifelong perspective. Increasing and improving the level of digital competences at all stages of education and training for all segments of the population. The concept for the development of the digital economy and society of Ukraine for the next few years defines the creation and implementation of the National Training Program for General and Professional Digital Competences and Knowledges as one of the priority tasks on the way to the accelerated development of the digital economy. The concept for the development of digital competences also notes the need to improve the quality of training of workers to create the possibility of modernizing the country's economy in accordance with the modern requirements. In order to train the qualified specialist analysts of economic profile, one of the competences that must be formed is precisely digital competence. Despite the fact that many students are well versed in the use of modern digital technologies, they often do not have all the necessary digital competence to successfully study in a higher education institution. To clarify the place and role of digital competence in the general structure of professional competence of future specialists in economic specialties, and analysis of educational and professional programs was carried out, and the mapping of digital competence in the content of professional training of students of specialties 051 Economics and 075 Marketing, which is implemented in Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv. A quantitative and qualitative analysis of the identified competences made it possible to determine the following. In these educational and professional programs and at different levels of training, there is a slight difference in the content and number of competences that can be classified as digital. The authors consider that there is some contradiction between the real requirements of society and the labor market for the content and quantity of digital competence and the normative requirements for the content of professional training of future analytic economists. To solve the above problem of the formation of digital literacy,
Taking into account the peculiarities of thinking of modern students, there are two approaches. Science digital skills are integrated in the educational process with professional knowledge. It's likely that the student will use them in their professional activities. Currently, the educational process is being provided with modular courses aimed at developing digital literacy, building an educational process based on blended learning technology, the use of active, interactive, problem-based teaching methods taking into account the individual characteristic of the modern generation of students. To determine the level of formation of digital competence of future analytic economists, the classification developed in 2017 by the European Joint Research Centre is used, which includes a number of levels of proficiency and examples of knowledges, skills, and abilities in each of the areas of competence. DCAM 2.1, the Digital Competence Framework for Citizens 2017. The digital literacy of higher education applicants within the European approach includes the personal, technical, and intellectual digital skills that are necessary to live in the digital world. Of particular importance in the above model is the central block, which can be characterized as the integration of resources, platforms, and results. The outer contour is a new format of requirements for the quality of teaching and characteristics of competences, as fundamentally new in relation to traditional models and technologies of teaching. In the process of research to identify the level of formation of digital competence, the authors used the National Test for Digital Literacy, Project C program implemented by the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, together with USAID and the Eastern European Foundation on the online platform Action Digital Education. In 2021, the Ministry proposed the project Digital Competence Framework for Citizens of Ukraine. The DCAMP UA for Citizens is based on the conceptual reference model DCAMP 2.0 and the updated European framework DCAMP 2.1, which are adapted to the national cultural, educational, and economic features of Ukraine. The result of testing the level of formation of digital competence of applicants for higher education can be accessed by the areas of the competence. Each of these areas of knowledge covers 5 competences. In the 2020-2021 academic year, 91 applicants for the first level of higher education in economics and marketing specialties took the National Digital Literacy Test. The level of knowledge and skills of students in the field of digital competence turned out to be different depending on the level of their self-development, self-motivation, and other factors. Both the average level in digital development and the high one can be both general in many areas of activities and partial in certain areas. Therefore, when researching digital competence, it's important to study its components and cell in which each of the competences can receive specific development and implementation. The detailed analysis of the questionnaire shows that the development of digital competence components is not equally developed among students. Components such as fundamentals of computer literacy, information literacy, data skills and communication, and interaction in a digital society are best developed. Students of the analytical profile of economic specialties show the higher result in the basic of computer literacy competency. This means that they actively respond to the emergence of new types of computer and mobile devices, can use the main common computers and mobile devices of medium complexity, easily master new application and new application software, learn the basics of web design and other. Based on the result of the research, it can be concluded that the digital competence combines knowledge and skills to use the digital technologies when working with modern business processes, their optimization and data modeling. Achieving the maximum degree of mastery of information and communication competence by a future specialist is possible only with systematic work on all components of the competence. The development and implementation of a pedagogical system for the formation of students' digital competence in the learning process, as well as the ways of delivering, should include target, active, informative, and effective components. The competency model is the basis for key changes in educational training for the digital economy.
Dear colleagues, sorry, and I apologize for the technical component. The presentation was replaced on disk and video presentation too.
Svetlana.
Так.
Okay. Digital competence for everyone. Very good. Our children are born with a smartphone in their hands. How much do they need to shape it, or do they have to teach us?
Could you repeat? Our students or we have to learn?
Students, our students.
Леонид, верно? Вячеслав, прошу вибачення. Could you repeat your questions? Who could teach us?
Our children.
Yes, I agree.
Our children are born with a smartphone in their hands.
Yeah. Okay, understand.
How much do they need to shape it, or do they have to teach us?
Interesting questions, really.
Потрібно нам навчати наших дітей цифрової компетенції, чи навпаки вони повинні нас навчати їй? Вони народжуються смартфоном в руках.
Так, дякую, я зрозуміла. Yes, really, we have to use the experience of our children and to combine their skills and interesting of digitalization process nowadays. And we can also be like students, and they could be like teachers for us. And now we know that a lot of digital programs and some learning system are providing in study at school and of course at university too. Maybe it's all what I can answer on this question.
Okay, very good. Any questions, colleagues?
Yeah, we have some questions from our chats, and my colleague Svetlana, the answer on it.
New questions. Could you specify what safety pieces are included in the test? Svetlana?
Just a minute, please. About the safety DC, sorry, but it's not my profile of studying and research, and I'm of course and my colleagues too research it in our next articles. Thank you. But if you have some answer only these questions, I really want to hear it.
Okay. In the next article, we're waiting. Thank you. Any questions?
Alexander, do you answer on these questions, or could you give us some advices?
Okay, I'm wonder what really is accounting under term safety digital competencies, because according to my experience, it is not so much particular information is included in this term, digital competencies at this moment. So I simply would like to pay attention that, for example, in the Taiwan, American, US universities, even for the profession, occupation, applied mathematics, human factors ergonomics discipline foresee 400 hours of preparing. 400 hours. That's why I was interested how many hours for this aspect of safety of digital competency is foreseen in our educational programs. That's why, as an advice, I can suggest a lot of information regards today's vision of ergonomics human factors in digital, in information society, in information environment.
Thank you, Alexander. Yes, really agree with you, and with big more about the cybersecurity, and we can use it in our preparing for students and for our children in the future. Thank you. Thank you, organization.
Thank you for your answer and for your presentation.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Svetlana. Next, research future of introduction of components of gamification in the course of development of constructive strategies of overcoming of life crisis and use. After collective Hanna Marin, Vyacheslav Sachi, Olga Goncharova, Svetlana and Paul. In this research considers the introduction of gamification in the education process of higher education institutions in order to develop stress resistance of the individual as a factor in choosing constructive strategies for overcoming life crisis in adolescence. Yes, please video on.
We present to your attention a report on the topic, Features of Introduction of Components of Gamification in the Course of Development of Constructive Strategies of Overcoming Youth Life Crisis. Open access to modern information technologies changes people's lives for the better, contributes to the transformation of the education system, increases productivity and competitiveness of any country in the world market. At the current stage of the development of informative society, there are main educational trends, including remote and mobile learning, more augmented reality, cloud LMS, personalization, big data, gamification, which can change not only the content of education, but also affect its quality undoubtedly. Gamification or gaming is expanding to all spheres of life. 5 educational trends that are reported by Forbes magazine: remote education, personalization, gamification, interactive textbooks, video game learning. 4 of them are gamification. Recently, global IT companies are working on gamification actively to improve existing educational platforms and to create new game training programs for use in open information and educational environment. According to the survey, the most active users of the gaming industry are young people under the age of 25. That is 72% of all respondents of different age. The relevance of the implementing of gamification elements into the higher education system is proved by the international project Game Hub, collaboration of universities and gaming industry enterprises in Ukraine, that is aimed to form Game Hub infrastructure in higher educational establishments in Ukraine. Project partners. It will give an opportunity to involve interested people in learning and to improve required skills and competencies in the gaming industry. But the issue of the research of impact of innovative components of gamification on the mental characteristics and adaptive abilities of the individual remains quite extensive and uncovered. A number of issues related to the identification of the features of the use of modern simulation games for the development or simulation of certain mental functions raise the need to create a continuum of multidisciplinary research. The analysis of scientific sources revealed the main advantages of using gamification in the process of psychocorrectional and developmental impact on personal constructs. In contrast to traditional technologies, gamification has an entertaining aspect that helps to have high involvement in the educational process. Gamification is a helpful tool that increases cognitive activity and motivation. Gamification allows students to develop flexibility of mind in solving practice-oriented tasks. Gamification allows students to cooperate not only with each other, but also with the teacher to feel equal with him or her, which helps to remove psychological interaction barriers. Gamification creates a sense of competition, causes positive emotions. Gamification provides feedback. There is a feeling of excitement, curiosity is aroused. Gamification creates a spirit of competition, which provides an opportunity to form constructive coping strategies of behavior in stressful situations and overcoming life. The research was conducted in the framework of joint research work of teachers and students, future psychologists and programmers at the Laboratory of Health Psychology, Laboratory of Psychophysiological Research, and STIAM Laboratory. The interdisciplinary approach was implemented in the doing the research work at the expense of the general fund of the state budget, adaptive system for individualization and personalization of professional training of future professionals in blended learning. State registration number is 012-OU10-1970. A comprehensive interdisciplinary study was conducted in the framework of scientific cooperation between STIAM Laboratory, Laboratory of Psychophysiological Research, and Laboratory of Health Psychology of Bogdan Khmelnytsky, Melitopol State Pedagogical University. The pilot study consisted of ascertaining and formative stages. Total sample was randomized and made by a stratification methods. There were 92 people included, future programmers and psychologists. According to the research objectives, the respondents were divided into control and experimental groups. No training sessions were conducted with respondents of control group. Specially organized corrective work was carried out with the responses of the experimental group. Individual and group forms of training work were used within the limits of personality's stress resistance development. The training included elements of traditional psychocorrectional work and gamification components with AR technologies. This study was conducted during 2019, early 2020. Let's consider each research stage in turn. The experiment, which was conducted in 3 stages. Ascertaining stage. Psychological diagnosis by methods with the help of computer complex HC psychotest and Google Forms. To identify strategies for overcoming life crises, we used the following techniques. Methodology, indicator of coping strategies by Amirhan. Amirhan, the coping strategy indicators. Questionnaire of the questionnaire type, how I overcame the crisis of life. The method of projective drawings was used as an auxiliary one. There was a given theme of drawings. I and the crisis. I'm coming out of the crisis. I'm after the crisis. Reflexive survey compiled by the authors using Google Forms provided an opportunity to summarize the subjective assessment of personal and behavioral changes of the respondents after experimental exposure. Forming stage. At the formative stage, we integrated traditional psychological training on the use of cognitive behavioral, relaxation, and case study techniques and the innovative opportunities of gamification components with AR technologies. The formative stage was carried out on the basis of STIAM laboratory. Statistical processing of experimental data includes calculations of measures of variability of results, correlation analysis, main Whitney discrepancy criteria. The ranking results show that there are age differences in the use of ways to overcome life crisis. The main Whitney discrepancy criterion for the age groups 18-19 and 20-21 varies between 144 and 150 at p equal to 0.05. For the participants of older age 20-21, in contrast to younger ones, more significant and priority for the future use are ways to overcome life crises, which are connected with the activation of social connections and communication, including the professionals, as well as stress resistance, emotional stability, resilience, low anxiety, self-control, self-regulation, self-belief, self-esteem, and the use of creative activities and hobbies. In addition, younger students are more likely to choose crisis management mechanisms such as search activity and imagery in the future. And 20-21-year-olds are more likely to choose physical activity. Analysis of the results of ranking the ways of overcoming by girls and boys showed that, in general, there is no statistically significant difference between girls and boys. However, there are differences in the use of certain methods in future. Girls are more often than boys tend to choose in the future such ways of overcoming crisis as the use of imagery, emotional reactions, as well as relaxation, meditation, breathing exercises, etc. And boys choose a logical search for causes and increase self-esteem. In general, it should be noted that adolescence is characterized by the desire to seek help and support from the close environment, that the young person trusts more both parents, loved ones, friends, and so on. Boys and girls show a desire to keep away from strangers, including professionals. Relevant empirical data are on the basis for the implementation of the formative stage of the research. At the formative stage, we integrated traditional psychological training on the use of cognitive behavioral, relaxation, and case study techniques and the innovative opportunities of gamification components with AR/VR technologies. The formative stage was carried out on the basis of STIAM laboratory. The following game technologies were recommended for the purpose of introduction of game simulators. The following Google Play applications were used within each corresponding training block. Number 1. Development of cognitive sphere of personality. Mind games is a collection of amazing educational games based on the principles of cognitive psychology and aimed to develop mental abilities. The application includes more than 24 educational games. This game trains concentration, reaction speed, memory, flexibility of thinking. Left versus right, brain games for brain training, is a game designed to check awareness, adaptability, reflection, prudence, accuracy, and patience. Stimulates the development of interspheric interaction of the brain. Neuronation is a set of 27 interesting games, exercises, and personalized courses that stimulate the development of intelligence, memory, and logical thinking. increase volume and concentration of attention. Lumosity is a set of 25 cognitive games that stimulate development of cognitive and motivational sphere of personality. Brain Games is an interesting brain simulator which consists of various games. Games for memory development, thinking, cognitive games, intelligence games, attentiveness games. An application with simulator games develops the mind, abilities, strengthens cognitive connections, expands consciousness, increases attentiveness, trains memory, adjusts the mental process. Number 2, development of emotional and volitional sphere. Emoji Puzzle is an imagination game in which you need to match pairs of emotions with associations. It stimulates the development of emotional competence. Harmony is a puzzle game that combines art therapy technology, music therapy, and an exciting gameplay. Anti-stress or relaxing simulation game is the collection of simulation games which helps to relax or switch attention temporarily. In this game, you can listen to a bamboo bell, play with wooden cubes, move your finger on the water, press buttons, draw with chalk, and so on. Number 3, development of the behavioral sphere. Easy Game are the game simulators presented in the application which provide an opportunity to make decisions based on the cognitive abilities of the individual in difficult life situations and situations that require quick choices. Virtual High School Teacher 3D is a simulator game which simulates the development of constructive behavioral strategies in professional activities. Homescapes is a simulator game focused on the development of constructive behavioral strategies in overcoming stressful life situations. We used rare diagnostic data as a criteria for assessing the effectiveness of the training and the changes that occurred with respondents using the methods of Indicator of Coping Strategies by Amirhan. The procedure for ranking the ways to overcome life crises and a questionnaire on changes that occurred after the training. Indicators of the experimental and control groups were compared with each other. Statistically significant differences between them were analyzed by the criterion of Mann-Whitney differences. Representatives of the experimental group who underwent active training with the use of gamification elements and AR/VR technologies, in contrast to the control group, which did not undergo training, showed significant changes in the choice of strategies to overcome everyday difficulties. Only 3 people from the experimental group chose, as before the training, an avoidance strategy, and the vast majority implement new active methods of overcoming. The vast majority of the control group did not change their strategies for solving daily problems. The Mann-Whitney test shows statistically significant differences between the results of the experimental and control groups. 164 at p, which is equal 0.05. As a result of the re-ranking of coping techniques according to the criteria, it is important for me, and I will use it in the future, out of 25 representatives of the experimental group, 7 of them showed a coincidence of sets of coping methods that are important to them, and they will use in the future. This is an indicator of a high level of awareness of these methods and their acceptance. That is, these subjects significantly improved their results and were assigned by us to the group with a high level of acceptance of ways to overcome life crises. 5 young people from the experimental group, according to the ranking, showed a result identical to the one they demonstrated before the training. 2 people remained in the group confused, and 3 got to the group low level of acceptance of ways to overcome. Perhaps the positive changes in these subjects would be more pronounced if they had the opportunity to receive additional training in the formation of practical skills of choice and application of possible ways to overcome life crises. In contrast to the experimental group, most of the control group, 21 people, did not change their level of acceptance of crisis management techniques. Only 2 people were able to improve their previous result and showed a high level. The differences between the control and experimental groups are statistically significant. The Mann-Whitney test is equal to 161 at the significance level of P, which is equal to 0.05. According to the results of the survey, the vast majority of respondents noted and named specific changes that they were able to notice in themselves, their own behavior. The results presented in the table show that the vast majority of the experimental group named the changes that took place in themselves, the experience and skills of self-regulation of emotions, which in our opinion also indicates the effectiveness of the training programs with elements of gamification. In the course of our interdisciplinary research, we made assumptions about the effective possibilities of implementing the components of gamification in the process of forming a constructive strategy for overcoming life crises of modern youth in the current conditions of pandemic constraints on individual life. Our research aimed at the implementation of an integrative approach in the development of future specialists' stress resistance, choosing constructive strategies for overcoming life crises has turned out to be a very vital and important one. This research shows an innovative combination of traditional psychodiagnostics and corrective influences with a gamification of components and AR/VR technologies. This research was conducted within the framework of the cooperation of laboratories: Laboratory of Psychophysiological Research, Laboratory of Health Psychology, and STIAM Laboratory. At the methodological level of the research, we have analyzed and substantiated the ways of combining traditional methods with gamification components and AR/VR technologies, and the model of development of constructive strategies for overcoming life crises. At the empirical level, the effectiveness of implementing gamification components and AR/VR technologies into the process of stress resistance development as an integrative feature of future specialists that directly influences productivity and efficiency of the future activity has been proved. The perspectives for further research are the following: development of the concept of the purposeful use of gamification components and AR/VR technologies while constructing an effective personality-oriented vector of higher education. Research of the impact of gamification on a person's mental. Thank you for your attention.
Вас не чутно.
Repeat, please. In our text chat, we see questions. Tell us more the concept gamification and the main prospects for its implementation.
Hello, my dear colleagues. Thank you for very much for your attention and your questions. Gamification approaches to increase motivation and involvement in the education process. We analyzed the model of gamification of UK CHO This model includes innovation, personalization, motivation, change, coping behavior of strangers. We used component of computer gamification from their standpoint. Gamification is a useful tool that increases cognitive activity and motivation. Gamification creates a spirit of competence, which makes it possible to form constructive strategies to overcome behavior in stressful situations and overcome life crisis. And the gamification provides feedback. There's a feeling to taking about communication with teachers. The perspective for future research are the following: development of the concept of the purposeful use of gamification components while constructing an effective personality-oriented vector of higher education, research on the impact to augment reality elements on the personal mental characteristic. About our research, we make very interesting results, and we planted research this component gamification in the future.
That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. It is a finished topic in this track. And we thank all the participants of our tracks and invite you to continue our work at 14 o'clock. And next track we say about for research that training of specialists for adaptive management techniques for teaching computer analysis of automated production system in the flexing environment. Next topic, adaptive learning environment of the SIG in the system of future maritime specialist training. Next, actual areas of development of digital competence of officers of the armed forces of Ukraine, and extended reality in digital learning, influence, opportunities, and risk mitigation. And last topic today.